So I go back to Circle of Miracles with Hannah Laura like 15 years ago when I was doing the Akashic Records. And I just kept moving further away from this area. So I came sporadically, but it's been a long time. So this is a really special place. And I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you. And everyone on Zoom. That's a new word. I was bowled over by the music too. I use that piece in my circles because it is such the cello. I learned. I have a couple friends who are music therapists, and the cello is the heart. That if you sit and you just feel that instrument, you get it. So yeah. So I love that piece, and especially in terms of the mother energy that it evokes. So I'll talk a little bit about my journey. I was a systems analyst long ago, and I moved into doing healing work over time. So I became a Rolfer, and I don't know how many of you know that particular type of body work, but for those of you that don't, if you've heard of myofascial release, it's basically the basis for that. And the basics for Rolfing is osteopathy. And it's called Rolfing because of a woman named Ida Rolf, but the formal name is structural integration. So basically it's helping our bodies to realign physically, but of course that affects all areas of who we are. So I started off, I made my transition out of the corporate world into Rolfing, and I went deeply into the somatic world. So I studied and did lots of workshops with different practices like body mind centering. I don't know if you've heard of continuum, just a lot of different things that helped me, and everything I did was from myself first and foremost. And as you mentioned so well, Susan, we have to take care of ourselves first. So that was my foray out of being mostly here in my left brain and into embodiment. So embodiment is the piece and the journey I continue to be on as a spiritual being. So when I moved into Rolfing, I also became a mother. I was about 40, and I phased out of the corporate world as I went through my Rolfing studies and began meditation, and then that evolved into energy work. So a lot of what I did as a mother was just continue to heal myself through different things. I did breath work, I did a lot of different things, and I found vibrational medicine. If you've heard of EFT before, I'm sure a lot of you have. I did a variation of that was very specific and more, in some ways, more in depth. Although EFT is in depth, it was a different kind of offshoot of it. And that began to bring about more openness to my intuitive self. So I was guided to go into the Akashic Records, which I did for a number of years. And my daughter was growing, and horses entered our lives. So over time, what I noticed was we got into horses about 15 years ago. And I can't go back and figure out when I first noticed this mother within, this divine mother within me coming through, or just my connection to it within myself. But I do know that these were things that were happening. So our first horse, we ultimately have 4. I have 3 now. There's a mare. She's still with me. Her name is Panama. And they call them grays, but they're white. And she's just this beautiful embodiment of mother energy. She's very gentle. Mares can be the school marm type, which is another form of the divine mother. You have, make sure that, it's that calm authority, or it's that sharp authority, or she's very gentle and flowy and soft. And in the tactile embodiment sense, she's got this billowy, soft hair. So everything about her is soft and beautiful, but she's this powerful animal. And she was my daughter's horse. I was working in the records, and I had a client that I actually paired up with Panama. And there was so much that was coming through for this woman about her mother. and just the mother energy. And my teacher horse, who's this big chestnut guy named Enzo, who passed last year, he was a few feet away munching on some hay. We were in this shed area. It was this huge open shed. So they were free to come and go. And this is how I work with horses. It's their choice. They can work with you from 50 feet away, or they can come up close and intimately. I noticed he kind of moved off to the side, and here comes Panama. She comes right up to us. And I just got this peace. This was the first moment I can remember this, where I'm still feeling that cello in my heart. So, and all that's moving through today, right? And I just remember in that moment offering to this woman that she could hug my horse. And it was beautiful. She did. And this horse offered it to her. And it was so healing and beautiful. So that was my first really conscious connection to the Divine Mother. But I knew it, but I still hadn't quite, it was like, okay, yeah, that happened, right? Mm-hmm. So I went on and I continued to notice this with her, but that was that profound moment. And then a few years later, my mother was visiting, and I had an encounter where I just remember she needed this in the moment. I just wrapped my arms around my mother, who's 5 inches shorter than me. I got the taller gene. And I just remember holding her and her child, my own mother. And I didn't know what it was. I just felt this embrace. So that was the second thing. So it was like, okay, that happened. So I kept getting these moments that got my attention, but it took years for me to really understand how much of this was part of the healing that at least comes through me. So about 2 years later after that, I was in Amsterdam. I was at a Tantra workshop. So I'd moved from the Akashic records into more embodiment. I'd come back to embodiment. The records were metaphysical. So I came back to embodiment, from the somatic world to the metaphysical and energy. Energy's always in there, but that was a specific focus on the metaphysical. To, okay, and we're going to work more with my own embodiment. So I chose sacred sexuality. And I'm in Amsterdam and I'm paired up with another woman, and we're doing, I think, breath and movement together. And suddenly here comes this hug again. And it was, again, incredibly tangible. And I could just feel this field. So it was like, okay, that happened. And then as I went through a year-long immersion in my tantric studies, I began to get feedback from other students about healing touch that I wasn't aware of, which I need to go back. My big horse, Enzo, that I mentioned earlier, he was a big guy. He was huge, beautiful chestnut guy. I walked out into the field one day, and this was 3 years before this. There's all these threads with the animals, with this training, with nature that I'm connecting here. And he was really almost unable to move without creaking. He was just standing there in pain. And I just stood there and I asked my angel for support. What do I do? And I went and I touched him at his head and I touched him at his tail. And I watched him reorganize his body. And I went, whoa. But I still didn't realize it was healing touch. I just thought I'm being supported here, which I am. Healing touch is, yeah, it's right. We're just the vessel. But there was still this, so back to Tantra 3 years later, I started having people come to me and said, I really would like a body work session. And I hadn't done body work in years. I had spent time with my horse doing nurturing touch on him and could see that he was really responsive to that. And I didn't know what it was. I just followed my hands. I just trusted my hands, which has been a journey for an analyst to just trust my hands. And I did that. And it came in the form of what felt good, what feels right. Where do my hands want to go? And when are they done? When are they complete? When do I need to move here? And it was always just this lovely, nurturing flow of energy. And the horses are great. Animals are great. They're so responsive, right? They don't have this, they have their traumas and dramas, but they don't have the neocortex dictating thing, right? They're just in the moment. So I would do that with my horses and with my friends' horses. And I thought, I don't think I can do this professionally because I can't explain it. The analyst was back when I can't explain it. And I don't know what to tell them their horse is receiving from this. So I spent a number of years in that mode, but I kept putting my hands on horses. So when Tantra came around, I started to put my hands back on people. But again, I just did it with friends and family. And so over time, what that taught me was that there was this healing touch, but what came with that healing touch was the continuing impulse to offer hugs to people and to touch them in nurturing ways. That it was no longer about, it was what the animals had shown me. It wasn't about looking at a body and determining where to go in the body and what to focus on and what to align and how to support that. It wasn't about assessment. It was, where does it feel in my body? So I'm operating now from my own body. I'm in my own space. I'm in source. I'm in that creative consciousness. And I'm just allowing, I'm not channeling, I'm standing within my own light, within myself. And I'm just focusing within myself. And there seems to be this fluidity that's happening. But the mother kept appearing where I just felt like people needed hugs. And then I go, am I the one that needs the hug? Well, I always need the hug too, right? We all need the hug. But in that moment with this person, so I just finally, I was apprehensive at first because it seemed like, oh, I ask people that. Now in the tantric world, that's fine, right? Or the body work world. Everybody's used to touch at all different levels, right? But people just coming to me to do healing, it's like kind of seems a little strange to suddenly hug somebody. So I just started to just ask, do you feel in your body like you would like to receive a hug? Do you feel that? Not, what does that mean? Most people, yeah. And it just happened a couple of weeks ago where I was working with somebody. And I felt it the whole time she was on my table. And it was a brief session, like a 15-minute hands-on healing session at a fair with them. And I didn't know her. I'd met her a minute before that. And I just kept getting this impulse that she needed a hug. But when she got up and she stood, I was behind her and just kept feeling like her shoulders just really need this nurturing love. But I feel like she really needs a hug. I didn't do the hug. I worked with her shoulders. And then we started talking. And she told me that a beloved animal had passed a couple of weeks before that. So there was all this grief that was there. And I said, I kept feeling like you might want a hug. And she said, oh, yeah. So it was like another one of those reminders to just go with it. Because I held back a little bit, just because I met her at this fair and it just felt like, I'm not sure. But it was like, no, just keep offering this to people. And that is I take that to be, that is the impulse coming through me from the Divine Mother who's here to heal this planet. So that's my little piece, that's my little part that I can do. And to remember, it's not about whether it's weird or strange or how people are going to take it. Just offer it, they can receive it or not. And if it's not tactile, perhaps it's just in the moment of standing with them in source and allowing that hug to come through, which animals have taught me a lot about non-touch healing, because there's horses that you just can't get close to. And there's a lot of people that do Reiki with horses and they need that too. So you just stand with them. and maybe you, kind of do a certain hands off where you just stand for them. And people, we can do the same with people. So, so that's my foray through discovering the Divine Mother energy. So it's very much in the work that I do. So the other piece is the other part of nature, which of course animals are nature, would be not horses, the trees and the woods. And about when I was doing the records, I'm going back again because I've got these different paths that I've taken that all intersect. I was in Bali about 15 years ago, and that was on an Akashic Records journey. I was doing some workshops. I was doing an intensive over there for about 3 weeks. And we go around to all these Hindu temples, and they were beautiful. But I would walk over and I'd go, oh, that's beautiful. And other people were having these emotional experiences. They were feeling energy. They were having all these emotional experiences. And I thought, well, that's nice. And I thought, what? Am I the only one not like having this connection? Right? But we'd also go out in nature. And finally it dawned on me that my temple was not the Hindu temple. My temple was nature. And I got that. It was like, okay. So once that was clear to me, like, okay, we're all here. We're all designed differently in these bodies at this moment. And for me right now, it's not the beautiful Hindu temples. It's nature. So we're back to the Divine Mother. So it's very much when I go into the woods, I feel that embrace. I feel the tree. They're very, very strengthening to me. I feel the power that comes through them. I feel their support. I feel their community. Have you ever walked in the woods and you see all these trees and you just see the community within those trees? Yesterday I was out for about 3 hours and just fun, whimsical thoughts come to my mind. Like there was several trunks that were like, I love to move and dance. So there's this dance room, and there are several, probably a half a dozen that were kind of like wrapped around each other in different ways. And it was like, there's a party going on over there. You could just see this party, right? And you just kind of innately get these energies and what's happening. And mine is just kind of more of a knowing than it is I can feel that. Mine's more of that knowing, and it's true with my hands too. And I'm talking about this because I think we all feel energy differently. And some people really feel like they feel the vibration strongly. I feel the vibration in my body and my nervous system. I wouldn't say necessarily feel the vibration this way. But what I do feel is, like, it's hard to describe it. I feel this yes when I'm touching or when I'm sensing something. There's just this yes, and that's my way of feeling energy. So I'm just, as a side note, just sharing that because I think it's easy when we hear people speaking about their intuitive self to think that it's, just a certain way, kind of like meditation is just simply a sitting practice. Whereas for me, it's moving, it's movement, it's dance, it's engagement. Okay, so that's the other piece of what I put forth in the world is for the people who either do sitting meditation or do not. It's not one way. There's a zillion ways. I mean, we know that from the internet with guided meditations, nature sounds, sound healing, all meditation. And I feel like meditation and healing are almost synonymous right now. They go together. You meditate in whatever way works for you, and you're in a healing space. So the way that I experience the mother in my work is in these waves. And so I work with it's not even a concept, but for lack of a better word, the mother within, which Susan, you spoke of, the mother within. Within. It's not, it is out there, but it's within us. And so experiencing that. So when going into nature, when you sense and feel nature within, the mother within, Gaia, and how you might in your own way experience that and connect to that in a tangible or cognitive, not cognitive is not the right word, aware way, an aware way. So I use the sensory body for that. The 5 basic senses and whatever other senses come to people, and it's about whatever rises with it. So it's different for everybody. And touch is at the core of my work. So we go back to baby. Maybe they end up in the NICU, right? And they're born. So there's a reason why they need to be touched every day. It's the basis, right, for our nervous system connection out into the world and a healthy nervous system. And our society has a lot of confusion with touch. You know, we have touch deprivation, we have touch damage, we have all the confusion with touch. So touch for myself is a way, self-nurturing touch, again, the mother, self-nurturing touch. And then as a somatic practitioner, exploring touch in ways through self-massage, or just, it can be through pressure. It can be through different types of touch. You know, it could be fingernails, it could be pads of your fingers, it could be body parts. So I love to explore how we can touch ourselves in a way that in the moment it might be tension that we want to alleviate in a body part, and how we can do that for ourselves. Or it might be that there's an emotion where we just need to hold ourselves, or we need to contain ourselves. But it's this connection that brings up the oxytocin and the dopamine. It's through the mechanoreceptors in our hand. So we're back to, as babies, needing that touch, that motherly touch, primarily motherly touch at the beginning. Because we come out of the womb and we need that. That's why I call what I do source touch. Yeah. And the other thread is my dog. I have a daughter, I have one child, and she'll be 23 this July. And she's a force. And I'm in awe of her. These generations that are bringing through so much creative flow, so much light. So that's my gratitude to the universe, is that I have this special being in my life that I was able to experience for in this physical form, in a very, very embodied way. And that connection, having that connection. And I think that our mothers and our children are obviously pathways to our own connections to ourselves. You know, our practices, in a sense, for those of us that need that practice. I'm just going to check and see if there's anything I wanted to say. How am I on time?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. After Q&A.
There is one more quick story I want to share about animals that also got my attention. So I kept being led to what I'm doing now. And I worked with animals my whole life, did a lot of rescue, cat adoption, cats and horses. And I love dogs, but I'm a cat and horse person. And I encountered a dog next to my horse barn about 4 years ago that was struggling to go down the street. And I asked the owner if she was open to some support. She said, sure. And I started to refer her to other people. And I thought, wait a minute, let me try this. Because with the animals, I kept thinking, no, I can't. And I got out, and it turned out that a few weeks before that, she had visited a horse farm, another horse farm on the other side of town, and with a friend. And her dog had run in, he collided with the electric fence. So she said, I don't know if it's the fences or the horses, but my dog is always happy about going down the street, but is scared now. So I got out and I put my hands on the dog, and I hadn't worked with dogs before. And I started just doing it with my hands. And I got the dog closer and closer to the fence. And the dog finally and I turn around, and there's a horse at the fence line, another way in which animals serve, right? And we went over, and the horse was right there, and dipped its nose down, touched the nose of the dog. Oh. That was the second healing. And horses are powerful healers. And then suddenly these 3 dogs come around the fence corner, and they come and they play, and it was number 3. They all go off. And then the dog was able to integrate the experience into joyful, playful canine romp around the horse property. And I moved my horses a year ago to a farm that's over on the Brandywine, only to find out that that experience that dog had was at that horse farm. There are a zillion horse farms in Pennsylvania and the Philadelphia area. So the synchronicities are so magical. I don't know that it means anything, but it's just one of those moments where you kind of go, wow, what is this? What's happening? Was I led here? How did that happen? Yeah. Exactly. Nothing's an accident. Yeah. So we're ready to do the Q&A. Yeah. Thank you for listening to my story.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Allowing me to share.